It's a story that starts with a violent crime and a secret identity.
You know, the things that happened that night I can't ever take back.
A battle with addiction that brought a superstar to his knees.
I certainly knew that I had let nights get away from me.
And the legendary hat trick that brought an entire city to its feet. This is the unbelievable true story of Bobby Ryan.
He told me that as sure as he could be, at that point that I was going to be the guy that he took. So I was, I had a feeling all night and this morning, but, like I said, the nerves are still firing.
Bobby Ryan was the second player taken in the 2005 NHL draft, a superstar prospect with the world at his feet. In 2020, he won the Bill Masterson Trophy, the NHL's award for perseverance and dedication, after one of the most emotional comebacks the sport has ever seen. But for most of his life, he wasn't even Bobby Ryan. His birth name was Robert Shane Stevenson. The name Bobby Ryan was an alias, a fake identity he was forced to take on as a child to help his family hide from the law. This is a story that starts not on a clean sheet of ice, but in the darkness of a violent crime. The story begins in October 1997 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Bobby's father, Bob Stevenson, a man known for his gambling problems, got into a violent argument with his wife, Melody. The fight escalated, and Bob brutally attacked her, leaving her hospitalized with a fractured skull and broken ribs.
Some broken bones and cracked ribs, and I don't know if it was something, skull fracture, something along those lines.
He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. After being released on bail and facing a long prison sentence, Bob Stevenson decided to run. He became a fugitive. But in a shocking turn of events, Melody chose to forgive him. She packed up their 10-year-old son, Robert, and the family went on the run together.
I don't know that I would have wanted to see him at that time, but I wanted him to be able to see his son.
They became ghosts, adopting new identities and moving across North America to evade a nationwide manhunt. Robert Shane Stevenson, the little boy who loved hockey, ceased to exist. In his place was Bobby Ryan, a kid with a fake name and a dark secret. His childhood was a life lived in the shadows. He has described it as a period of constant, crippling anxiety. Every knock at the door, every new town, every new school was a source of fear. He couldn't get close to anyone. He couldn't tell his friends the truth about his past or his real name. He was a prisoner of his family's secret. He has spoken in interviews about the immense psychological toll. He said, "I was always scared. I was always worried somebody was going to find us." The trauma of this period, the constant need to lie and hide, would stay with him for the rest of his life. It became the root cause of the demons he would later battle as an adult. This life on the run lasted for over 2 years. The family was even featured on the TV show America's Most Wanted. Finally, in February of 2000, it all came to an end. Acting on a tip, U.S. Marshals tracked down the family to a home in El Segundo, California. They stormed the house and arrested Bob Stevenson right in front of his 12-year-old son. The image of watching his father being taken away in handcuffs became another traumatic memory seared into his mind. His father was extradited back to New Jersey, pleading guilty to lesser charges, and was sent to prison. With his father in jail and his secret finally out, Bobby's life was in chaos.
That was kind of the toughest time for me. It was right when he left. I knew it was essentially going to be a long time before I saw him again.
The one and only constant, the one place he could escape the anxiety and the trauma, was on the ice. Hockey wasn't just a game for him. It was his sanctuary. It was the one place where he didn't have to lie, where he could just be a kid with incredible talent. And it was that talent that would become his only path forward. On the ice, he wasn't a fugitive son. He was a prodigy. And soon, the entire hockey world would know his name. But that fame came with a price. With his father in prison and his family life shattered, Bobby Ryan poured everything he had into hockey. He and his mother had settled down in the Detroit area, and on the ice, he began to make a name for himself. His talent was undeniable. He was a big, powerful winger with incredibly soft hands, a rare combination of brute force and delicate skill. He was drafted first overall into the Ontario Hockey League and became a dominant force for the Owen Sound attack. In his draft year, he was a man among boys, scoring 37 goals and 89 points, cementing his status as one of the top prospects in the world. This led him to the 2005 NHL Draft, a night that would become both a blessing and a curse. That year's draft was famously known as the Sidney Crosby Sweepstakes. Crosby was a once-in-a-generation talent, the most hyped prospect since Wayne Gretzky, and the undisputed #1 pick. The hockey world was obsessed with who would land Sid the Kid, but the second best player in that draft, the consensus number 2, was Bobby Ryan. The Anaheim Ducks selected him with the second overall pick. On the surface, it was a dream come true, the culmination of a life spent overcoming unimaginable adversity. But it also placed an enormous, and in his own words, unfair weight on his shoulders. He would forever be the guy drafted after Sid. Every goal, every point, every slump would be relentlessly compared to a player who was already being called the next GOAT. Years later, Ryan would admit that being drafted second was probably one of the worst things to happen to me. It was an impossible standard to live up to, a constant shadow that would follow him for his entire career. And his journey to NHL stardom was not a straight line. That fall, he went to his first training camp with the Anaheim Ducks, but the team, a veteran squad with championship aspirations, felt he wasn't ready. It was a major disappointment. For a number 2 overall pick, being cut and sent back to junior hockey was seen as a significant setback. It fueled the quiet whispers that maybe the Ducks had made a mistake, that maybe the kid from the troubled background couldn't handle the pressure. He would spend 2 more full seasons in the OHL, watching from afar as Sidney Crosby immediately became one of the best players in the NHL. It wasn't until the 2008-09 season, a full 3 years after he was drafted, that Bobby Ryan finally became a full-time NHL player. But when he arrived, he proved he belonged. In his official rookie season, he was a sensation, scoring 31 goals and finishing as a finalist for the Calder Trophy as the league's Rookie of the Year. He played alongside future Hall of Famers Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, forming one of the most dominant lines in hockey. Over the next 4 seasons, he would score 30 or more goals every single year, establishing himself as one of the premier power forwards in the entire league. He had finally lived up to the hype. He was a bona fide NHL superstar. In 2013, he was traded to the Ottawa Senators in a blockbuster deal, a team that made him their highest paid player and the face of their franchise. From the outside, it looked like the fairy tale was complete. The kid who grew up with nothing, who had survived a life on the run, was now a rich and famous hockey star. But underneath the surface, the demons of his past were catching up to him. The anxiety and trauma from his childhood had never gone away, and to cope with the pressure of being a top player, the constant comparisons to Crosby, and the secrets he had carried for so long, he turned to alcohol. For years, he was a high-functioning alcoholic, using drinking to self-mediate, to numb the pain that he had never truly dealt with. He was a star on the grand stage, but he was slowly falling apart off of it. On the ice, he was winning, but off of it, he was an addict, and his 2 worlds were about to have a head-on collision. By November of 2019, Bobby Ryan was at a breaking point. The years of using alcohol to numb the trauma of his childhood had finally caught up to him. He was no longer a high-functioning star. He was just trying to get through the day. He later described himself during this period as shaky and a mess. He knew he couldn't fight the battle on his own any longer. On November 20th, 2019, he made the most courageous decision of his life. The Ottawa Senators announced that Bobby Ryan would be taking an indefinite leave of absence to enter the NHL-NHLPA Player Assistance Program to get help for alcohol abuse. In a sport famous for its tough guy culture, where showing vulnerability was often seen as a weakness, a high-profile star was publicly admitting that he needed help.
I'd have 20 days of nothing and one real bad one. And, you just can't get better without it. And there's such a stigma around not asking for help, just trying to do it. And I didn't want to continue to do that.
The reaction from the hockey world was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. Fans, teammates, and media members rallied around him, praising his courage. The Senators organization, led by GM Pierre Dorion, stood by him completely. But his biggest source of strength was his wife Danielle, who had been with him through his darkest moments and was now his rock as he began the difficult journey of recovery. For over 3 months, he was away from the game, focusing solely on his sobriety. He then returned to the team and prepared for his first home game back in front of the Ottawa fans. The date was February 27th, 2020. The Senators were playing the Vancouver Canucks, but the game itself was secondary. This night was about Bobby Ryan. The sense of anticipation and emotion in the building was incredible, and during the first TV timeout, the moment came. The arena's video screen played a tribute to his journey, and as the camera focused on him on the bench, the entire crowd of over 12,000 fans rose to their feet. For over a minute, they gave him a powerful, emotional standing ovation, chanting, "Bobby, Bobby, Bobby." Ryan, a man known for his toughness, sat on the bench and openly wept, wiping tears from his eyes, overwhelmed by the love and support from a city that had embraced his struggle as their own. It was a beautiful moment. But what happened next was a miracle. Just a few minutes later, Bobby Ryan scored a goal. The building erupted. It was a great moment in what was already an unforgettable night. Then, in the second period, he did it again. He scored another goal. The crowd went wild, a sense of disbelief and magic filling the arena. Could this really be happening? The storybook ending was sealed in the third period. On a breakaway with the entire crowd on its feet, Bobby Ryan scored his third goal of the game, a hat trick. The arena exploded in one of the loudest and most joyous celebrations in recent memory. Players from both teams tapped their sticks on the ice in a sign of respect. It was a perfect, almost unbelievable moment of sports magic, a scene so powerful it felt like it was from a movie. In an emotional post-game interview with his family by his side, he could barely find the words. He simply said,
Ottawa being the community that it is, that the reception would be good, and it was just an incredible evening, so I thank you to all of them.
He had conquered his demons in the most dramatic way possible, creating one of the most emotional and inspiring comeback stories the sport had ever seen. That storybook hat trick was the emotional peak of his comeback. But the journey wasn't over. Now it was time for the league to officially recognize his incredible perseverance and for his story to become something bigger than hockey. The hat trick in Ottawa was a moment of pure sports magic, a personal triumph celebrated by the entire hockey world. It was a single night of relief and joy. But the official validation, the moment that would cement his comeback in the league's history books, came a few months later. In September of 2020, the Professional Hockey Writers Association voted for the winner of the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy. This isn't an award for the best player, the highest scorer, or the toughest fighter. It's given annually to the one NHL player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. It's the league's highest honor for character. It's an award for the player who has overcome the most, the one who has stared into the abyss and found a way to climb back out. In the history of the award, there was perhaps no candidate more deserving than Bobby Ryan.
2020 Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy, Bobby Ryan.
When his name was announced as the winner, it was a profound and emotional moment, the entire hockey world officially recognizing the immense battle he had won. His acceptance speech was a landmark moment of vulnerability for a professional athlete.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. It took a lot out of everybody around me, and thank you for recognizing that.
He didn't just thank his teammates and coaches. He looked directly into the camera and spoke from the heart about his struggle, about the shame and the fear, and most importantly, about the person who had been his rock through it all, his wife Danielle. In a voice choked with emotion, he said,
I'm back and I'm trying to get better every day, and every day I wake up and go through this process and therapy and everything is so that I can be better for the two of you, and hockey will always come second to that. And I love all of you.
It was a stunning moment of public accountability, raw emotion, and profound love. He was a player in the tough guy world of the NHL, laying his soul bare for the world to see, thanking the woman who stood by him through his darkest days. He had reached the peak of his redemption. He was a Masterton Trophy winner. But as anyone who's battled addiction knows, the fight is never truly over. The climb is not a straight line. The hero's journey is not a fairy tale. It's a series of battles. Sometimes you stumble. After his incredible comeback season in Ottawa, Ryan's playing career began to wind down. He played a final season with the Detroit Red Wings, but the journey was taking its toll. In July of 2022, the hockey world was saddened to hear that he had suffered a public relapse. He was arrested for public intoxication at the Nashville International Airport after store employees reported that he had taken items and was clearly disoriented. The police found him to be a danger to himself, and the mugshot that circulated online was a heartbreaking image. For his critics, it was a moment to say, "I told you so." But for those who understood the nature of his battle, his response was a powerful lesson in resilience. Instead of hiding in shame, he confronted the setback head-on. He posted a message to his social media, taking full ownership of his mistake. He wrote, "Today is day one again. Mostly embarrassed, but I shouldn't be. Today, I'm waking up and choosing better. This act of public accountability, of admitting his stumble without making excuses and immediately recommitting to his recovery, was in many ways just as powerful as his comeback hat trick. It was a real, honest, and human moment that resonated with thousands of people who were fighting their own battles. It was a reminder that recovery is not a destination, it's an ongoing journey. It was a lesson in what true perseverance looks like. This is the foundation of Bobby Ryan's new legacy. He's no longer just the guy drafted after Sid. He has become one of the most important and honest advocates for mental health and sobriety in the entire sports world. In podcasts and interviews since his playing career ended, he has spoken with a new level of openness about his traumatic childhood, about the anxiety he has carried his entire life, and about his ongoing battle with alcoholism. His willingness to be vulnerable, to share his entire story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, has been instrumental in breaking down the toxic tough guy stigma in professional sports that so often prevents athletes from admitting they need help. His story has become a beacon of hope, a powerful example that it's okay to not be okay, and that asking for help is the ultimate sign of strength. His journey is the ultimate proof that a person's rock bottom does not have to be their final destination. It's a testament to the idea that true strength isn't about never falling down, it's about having the courage to get back up over and over again. In the end, his most important victory wasn't a hockey game. It was his fight for a second chance at life. His story proves that it's never too late to rewrite your own ending, no matter how dark the beginning was. Bobby Ryan's legacy isn't just about goals and assists. It's about hope. So, who's another athlete with an incredible story of redemption? Share it in the comments.